Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the King's Law podcast. I just want to make a brief reminder that everything that I talk about, all the laws that I bring up, are on a website called www.thekingslaw.com. It's very convenient. Everything's written in there in modern day English, and the goal is to get it translated into every language. And the laws are sorted there. There's one list, right? And you can sort that list by category, by book, chapter. And then there's a free text box where you can type in words and it'll filter the list by word. So it's quick and easy to search for what you are looking for. So you don't have to spend too much time searching around for different things when you have conversations and when you're studying. And today's episode is about who your brother is. And when I ask the question who your brother is, I mean who is here to help, right? And who should you be around and who should you welcome and things like that. Not saying that you have to, shun all people and things like that, but just a guide, because sometimes when you're going down this road, it gets hard sometimes to discern who is with you and against you, because in my experience, and it says it in the Bible, you see it in the journey of Moses, you see it in the journey of Jesus, right? A lot of folks will turn against you who might be your blood relatives, your father, your mother. I'm pretty sure it says in the New Testament, I'm not here to create peace. I turn father against son, brother against brother, something like that. So when you're going on this journey, which in some cases is called bearing your cross, right? It gets hard to discern who is your friend versus foe, or your brother, right? And when I say brother, I mean, somebody who is kin to you as far as, on your journey, who's going to help you grow in your journey, who is your friend, not your foe. And it gets hard during that journey because, it's very scary, when you go on this journey, how similar my experience and possibly your experience will be to, these stories, story of David, story of Moses, story of Jesus, right? When you try to take the righteous path, people will, if you decide to, keep the evil around you. When I say the evil, I mean the people who don't want to do wrong, who don't want to do right, and who choose to subscribe to different things. They'll attack you. You'll try to play it off and say, hey, this is my brother, or this is my, relative, my mother, my sister, right? But when you do that, you leave them close to you, and in my experience, they will eventually attack you. And the attacks, you feel blessed, so you're not very worried about them. But if you keep that evil around you, it will eventually get to you, and at that point, it will be your fault, because you would have known and have seen the signs. So I would say, I'm just giving advice from my point of view, which is kind of not hindsight at this point, because I'm still in the middle of it, but just hindsight on a lot of experiences that I've been through. When you see those signs of someone who chooses to subscribe to something else, aka evil, right? They're going to see you get blessed. They're going to see your life become different, and they're going to attack you. It's just what's going to happen. In my experience, I'm not saying this was, but when you're bearing your cross, in my experience, that's what happens. If you don't remove yourself, you'll know who you need to remove yourself from. In a lot of cases, those ties will be so deep, your close relative or whomever it may be, somebody who's been in your life forever, right? You want to ignore it just out of not being too extreme, or, not being, seen as someone who's becoming like an extremist, or like somebody who's part of a cult or something, which, there is no part of a cult. Because when this journey, I'm just going to give you my experience. This journey, it gets lonely. So it's not, there's no one guy who's going to, you got to truly follow God and his laws and commandments and seek, his guidance. You know what I mean? There's no guy out there who's going to guide you to the end, to the goal line. You're going to have faith. So when you have faith, right, your faith, if your faith is really getting tested, you're not going to be able to hold hands with somebody and have them lead you across the pool. You're going to have to get thrown into the deep end and swim. And at that point, you're alone, right? So, expect to, it's not like, expect to lose what matters to you. I mean, it's not a real test unless, something that matters to you is at stake and you have to, persevere through that or, persist through that, right? So expect it. And even if you do expect it, right, the test is going to be, it's going to be great, but the test is going to be something that is going to shake you, but just persevere through it. And at the end of the day, when you look back at it, you'll realize, like, I was never in harm's way. Nothing ever happened to me. It was just I could have gave up at that point and turned around and just, do what most people around me are doing. And I would have been stuck in that, that existence, right? But back to the topic of, like, who your brother is. This topic is important because a lot of people who I see, who are on this journey in different ways, right? Someone who may be Christian, or someone who's Jewish, or someone who's Muslim, or someone who's Catholic, right? People choose to tend brotherhood. People choose to discern brotherhood, or who is their brother / friend, based on their group, or based on their family, right? One, the family, and two, their group that they subscribe to, right? And this is a message to caution against that. You're not going to have the people who are around you. It's not likely that y'all are all going to subscribe and decide to take this journey and stick to it. Even if they say, they give you lip service and things like that. In my experience, nobody, people will tell you anything, especially if you're at that point where you've already been tested and you're being blessed. If you're at the point where you're being blessed, people will say anything because they just want to siphon off your blessings. But at the end of the day, they will do things that harm you. So when you are discerning who is your brother, don't lean on who is my biological brother. That might be your enemy. He might be someone who is living a very evil lifestyle and has evil intent, and doesn't rely on God, relies on his intellect and things like that, and will turn around and attack you or try to take advantage of you. Not that the person can take advantage of you, right? Because you're blessed and you're protected. But if you'll see these things, like I've said, if you're one with the universe, right, you can see through things pretty easily. People might not know that because they can't see through anything, so they think that you're oblivious, right? And you may, just out of love, stick around and say, hopefully it'll get better. But I'm going to caution you against that, because you're not God, and you don't get to judge who gets treated what way, and who gets condemned and who gets favor, right? If you see someone with ill intention, especially towards someone like yourself who's on this journey and following God and going to reap their blessings, God's not going to like that. It doesn't matter if you like them or not. God's not going to like that, and they're probably going to get punished. And if you choose to aid and embed that person, you're going to be held accountable. If you want to step in front of the punishment, you're going to take their punishment, and I don't think you want that. You know what I mean? You can't sacrifice yourself for somebody else. It doesn't make any sense. So I would be aware of that and be cautious of that, especially when we're talking about close relatives like your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your friend, your childhood friend, right? You're going to want to lean on the side of, hey, I'm not going to be extreme and things like that. But I'm telling you, you're gonna in some of these cases, you're gonna have clear signs that this person is subscribing to some evil. They never say it out loud. Nobody's gonna come and tell you they worship the devil. And I'm not saying that this person does worship the devil, but they say little things, and you got to be aware of them. They say certain things like, when you start talking about following God and following the law and things like that, they'll say certain things like, oh well, if you choose to subscribe to that. They'll say certain things, but when you got to really, think about that. If he says if you choose to subscribe to that, he's saying he subscribes to something else. And yeah, I hear you, but I don't want to do that. At that point, that person, there's only two sides. You have to, you have to make a clear line because there's only two sides. There are people who intend to do good, and there are people who intend to do evil. There is no limbo in the middle. So if a person tells you, yeah, that's great if you subscribe to that, some of us get older and we subscribe to some other things. We get outside of, church or our group, right? This is not about a group. This is about universal law and saving myself, saving yourself, right? No matter how long that journey takes, no matter how many up and downs you have, right? Just perfecting yourself and making sure that those blessings are passed down to the next generation in your family and taught, right? And that's what the journey is about, keeping yourself alive. When that person tells you, oh, if you subscribe to that, at that point you have to realize if that person has children, or if you are that person's child, or or you're around that person, you have to take into account that they're going to be preaching death at that point in time, because they have already let you know that they subscribe to something else. And if they're preaching against the law, I don't mean preaching like they're a preacher. I mean they're speaking against the law, saying like, oh no, you don't got to do this, do this. At that point, they're preaching death. Now, do you want yourself or your family, your children, whatever, around someone who is preaching death out of their mouth? And if you aid and abet that person and show, absolute mercy to that person, like, yeah, God, like oh, this is my friend. This is someone who is near and dear to me. They get special treatment. Do you think that, that's going to be seen as righteousness in God's eyes, right? Because God is out here moving indiscriminately. And if you are to be closer to God and follow his law, that is what you are supposed to do too. So, these groups that people decide to divide by, who is, there's plenty of stuff out there. I'll name a few of them, and they're all nonsense. People decide to divide who's in their tribe, who's friend or foe by family. I know I did that myself for a long time, very long time, to the point where, it was almost all lost and it didn't make any sense. And, I'll tell you, you can't divide by family. There's only good, there's evil. So, find people who are doing good, or, wait for people to, reveal themselves who intend to be good and do good, and be with those people. And if your family and the people who you grew up with are not those people, and they all decide to subscribe to something else, and they don't, leave it alone. Leave, because you won't have to leave it alone at one point in time, so you might as well just cut it off early before you end up damaging yourself pretty permanently, or taking a long time to heal and hold yourself up, right? And then people decide to divide by their religious group, right? Oh, I'm Jewish. Anybody who's Jewish is good. I'm gonna put them first and whatever else. But the guy, the people who they put in first are doing crazy stuff. They throwing gay pride parades there and raves and stuff like that. So you should be more against that person than someone who is in a neighboring country who's against that person for what they're doing. You should be first in line to say, nah, you gotta go. Yeah, right. Same thing, Muslim, right? I talked about in earlier episodes, like I think it's God versus Islam, right? It's a lot of people in Muslim nations who are not idol worshippers, but they have multiple gods, and they speak of them and things like that, and that goes against the law. So, if you say, oh, these are the infidels, and you have a group of people in another country, but then you have people in Muslim countries who are not being addressed, who are out here talking about other gods and saying third. You can't. I mean, I'm pretty sure it said remove the plank out your own eye before you try to pluck the sand out of somebody else's. And this is where you have to draw the line between who's your brother. You see, if you have a whole, like, let's say we have neighboring countries like in Egypt and in Israel, right? And you know they have problems that go back, right, because of war and people bombing and people, you know, doing different things, right? And they have a beef. But when you look at it, at the end of the day, that line of Israel versus Egypt doesn't make any sense, because there are plenty of people in Israel who intend to do good and follow God's laws and commandments and keep them. And there are plenty of people in Israel who have no regard for that and who are doing whatever they want. I mean, I just named a few events that'll tell you that, right? When those things are allowed to go on, right? Then you have plenty of people in Egypt who intend to do the right thing, who are trying to, who intend to do the right thing, right? And then you have plenty of people in Egypt who are talking about the gods, who are talking about this, that, and the third, and whatever else, and have all of these symbols and whatever else, right? So, right, if you try to split that pie 4 ways and you say, okay, well, I'm Egyptian and everybody in Egypt comes first and gets preference, and you know, there are people who are doing good and bad, but like I'm going to take care of them separately the way that I would take care of a person from Israel who does good and bad. That is not going to work, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all one planet and it's only good and bad. So at the end of the day, if you all were united beyond borders, beyond race, right, beyond family, it's easy to root out what's going on that's wrong, because you have more allies in doing right. You're not limiting yourself and allies by who is your family or who is part of your nation or who you have a past beef with. I mean, for all you know, the people who might have bombed your country from that other nation may all be evil people, and the people in that other country don't really agree with those people, but they have the access to the ammunitions. And the reason they have the access to the ammunitions is because the good people may be outnumbered in that country by the bad people, and there's a war going on in that country, right? And that's where we have to discern who our brother is. And you have to, I'm not saying you got to go out there and seek your brother. There's nothing that says that, but like, you know, we have to be very careful about who we choose to make our brothers and who we aid and embed. Because when you aid and embed those people, that's when you have those types of problems, right? When you say, hey, this is my son. Oh, yeah, I know he went off and did this, right? If your son doesn't want to correct himself, if your son doesn't want to listen, even though you're teaching him law and what is right, and you know how to, you know, further and take care of his family and be a good husband, then, you know, that guy is your greatest enemy. Doesn't matter if that's your son or your brother. That is your greatest enemy, because he is closest to you and to destroy you. Right? And he'll go off in the world as a representative of you and make a fool of you and get you destroyed. And the same thing goes for every country, every family. It's all the same. So when you're splitting that pie up of who's your friend and who's your foe, we got to start removing, you know, you, me, we all have to remove those lines that we put in our life. Because even if we say, you know, good is good and bad is bad, right? You know, a lot of us, including myself, I'm guilty of this. We place preference on our family members, right? If our family member stole something versus somebody we don't know stealing something, right? We treat it differently. We say, oh, I know that guy, man. He's a good guy. I've heard that plenty of times, especially, you know, when I was working at companies and things like that, right? They'll come to you and you know, based on the background of the person, right, it gets different treatment. There'll be a guy who's lying about everything, right, and based on what they know about the guy, or based on maybe their similarity in race, they say, oh man, you know, he did that, but he's a good guy, because they understand and they identify with that guy. But, you know, same thing, a different person, maybe this person's a different race, right, they go and get him fired. And that's where our problem is, right? We have to make sure that we discern what good is, and whoever is doing good is our brother, and whoever is doing bad is not, right? And so religious groups is something we separate ourselves with, that we need to stop. It's just who's doing right and who's doing wrong. And then we get to race and skin color. And when we get to race and skin color, that really doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's whole religious groups based on, one skin color is bad, right? When you talk about the Mormons, I believe, and I didn't read the Book of Mormon. I didn't read the Book of Mormon. I looked this up at one point in time because this is what was told to me by a family member who has read the Book of Mormon, right? And it was talking about, like, I think, like, saying, like, anybody who's brown skinned from wherever has the mark of Cain, you know what I mean? And, like, black people are bad. But it's like, that don't make any sense. Like, when we look at that, that doesn't make any sense. And you are now saying, in the name of God, right? Because that's what all these people come with, their religions, in the name of God. You're now injecting racism into God who created this universe and all the living beings on it. You're saying that he's saying this group of beings, no matter what they do, is bad, and this group is good. And just because you're doing that, you are going to allow evil to run rampant in your group, because you are giving them a leeway, saying that, oh yeah, just by skin tone alone, you were good. Doesn't make any sense, and you setting yourself up for failure in the future, because that perversion of justice, right? Because God is a just God. That perversion of justice, saying that just because you was born, right? Because it says there in the law, it says, here, I'm gonna find it and tell you what the law is, because I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna really speak on it until I find it, but there's a law in here that says, you can't be punished for your father's sins. Like, father can't be punished for the son's sins, and sons can't be punished for the father's sins. But I'm having trouble finding it right now. So if I find it, then I'll come back to it. And with that being said, you could never judge somebody based on skin color in their race. You are sinning at that point in time, because you're judging somebody's son based on something their father may or may not have did, right? Or you're judging the father based on something the son may have did. You're judging a whole group of people based on legend has it, right? Because a lot of these people have never even been to the country where this other group of people live. And so when you base things on skin color or origin or race or whatever it may be, it doesn't make any sense, because we've been around, human beings have been on this earth for a long time, and people have been moving around forever. So if you say, oh, we're good because we're from this group, and say, okay, well, what about all the people in those groups who gone to different places and who have had different children? What about the people in those groups who may have been born a little lighter and had children with lighter people and became very light? Or what about the people in those groups who were born a little darker, a little more bronze, and they bred together and they became dark over time, right? Are those not still your people? Because that happens all the time. There are people in my family who are brown skinned. There are people in my family who are pale. I mean, like pale, like can't hold, they'll get burned if they go out in the sun. So is one bad because one is white as snow, and the other one is good because the other one is brown, or one is bad because he's brown, or one is good because it's literally, that is, if you really think about it, it's not intelligent. It's not an intelligent way to make decisions. And when people, because I mean, I've been to big groups of big bodies, right? We're talking about companies or whole states or whole countries that judge people based on this, right? And when you look at it, it's not intelligent at all. It's kind of like the basic you don't want to do any work, right? And it's at the end of the day, that is sin, it's evil. When you really look at it, you should be studying the law. You should be getting yourself in line, right? And you should be separating yourself from evil. Not a group of people. You should be separating yourself from evil. So you should be drawing the line in your life of what is accepted and what is not accepted based on what is good and evil. Not what is Muslim and what's not Muslim. Not what is light and what is dark. Not what is American and what is not American. You should be drawing the line based on what is good and what is evil. And I'm not saying you got to be extreme and things like that and go and kill everybody who you think is doing evil, because we all, do evil at different points in time. But when you have groups who choose to do evil and they say, I subscribe to something else, at that point they have denied God's will in his laws for his universe, and will go and preach death and will pervert others in your group. So that is your main problem. And we all have those people in our groups. So you should be dealing with those problems, and you should be getting with your brothers, whether they're in your group or not, to deal with those problems. Because your brother may have the resources to help you deal with those problems in your group, and you may not, and vice versa. Right? You may have the resources to deal with your brother's problems in his group. So we shouldn't be afraid to help each other and reach out to each other. Right? And say, look, that's my brother. My brother, even though he's on the other side of the planet, or even though he might be from a different nation than me, or a different religious group, right? Or even though he might be a different skin color than me, that's my brother. The one who does good is my brother. Right, and it's hard to discern because you don't know people's true intentions. But when you do know people, when you do realize people's true intentions, you do realize, hey, this is a person who intends to follow God's laws and commandments, right? He intends to do that. Nobody's perfect, but those are his intentions, and he doesn't deny it. He doesn't deny God and say, oh, well, that's something from 1,000 years ago. I don't need to follow that. You never heard him say that out of his mouth. And if you do catch him doing something wrong or whatever, he'll appreciate it, right? He'll say, "You right, man. I need to fix that. I gotta get better," right? Instead of saying, "Well, I'm just me. I do what I want," right? And it's all in there through the law for you to do this, right? There's nothing that tells you in the law to discern who is good and who is bad by a religious group. There's nothing in there that tells you to discern who's good and who's bad by what nation they were born in. There's nothing in there that tells you to discern who's good and who's bad by skin color. All of those are made up by people who are falling away from law. It's sin, right? And I say the first thing that I've come across that kind of points that out is law 18 at this point in time. It's Exodus 12 verse 49. It says, the strangers that live amongst your people and all the homeborn must follow the law. So when you're in your country and you say, well, hey, this is a good Indian guy, he has his own religion, they have 50 billion gods, right? Or this is a nice Japanese guy, oh, he has his own religion, they got 50 billion gods and make one up every day. That is evil. That person is evil, and you should not be around them. They should not be in your land. And you say, why? It's right there in front of you. It says the strangers that live amongst your people and all the homeborn. So that's everybody, the visitors, the people who came to stay, the permanent residents, and all the homeborn must follow the law. It says must. It doesn't say they may. It says they must follow the law. So if they don't, you need to send them back to where they came from. And it don't have to be me, but you say, look, I can't be around that because here we have to do this. Period. So that'll tell you who is your brother and who is not your brother. It says they all must follow the law. So everybody's being judged by the same thing, no matter who you're around. So if your brother's doing good or bad, then he gotta go, right? If the stranger amongst you is doing good or he's doing bad, he gotta go. It's the same. There's no difference between the two. And then I would say Law 72 is Exodus 22 verse 31. It says you should be holy men to God. Right? So if you decide to mix yourself, no matter who you are, your group of people, if your group of people has 10 people who have devoted themselves to doing God's will and being in tune with universal law, right? And making that the kind of standard of a good life, and then you have 90 who don't, you are not holy men unto God. If you live in Israel and you say I'm Jewish, and the only one amongst you who follows the law is small neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and then the rest of your country, who you do get support from, people come in and out, they do business, right? They do stimulate your economy. Those people are doing whatever they want to do out there in Tel Aviv, whatever. You can't say we are holy men to God and I'm following the law if you allow that in your land, right? You can't say you need help getting rid of X, Y, and Z before you say I need help getting rid of this. That's who we should be saying you need help to get rid of, because that is not your brother. That is the enemy that's the fox in your hen house. That's a greater problem than somebody who is of a different, nation. You all might share a border, or that person might be on the other side of the planet. That person who is in your country, who is your brother, who looks like you, who you know is doing wrong and can go out there and pollute the rest of your people, that person is more dangerous to you than that person who's across that border or across the world on the other side of the planet. Way more dangerous to you and poses way more of a threat to you. That person who raised you and who was raising your other siblings. That person who might be your spouse and is raising your kids with you. That person who might be your child. That, you see what I'm saying? That person is way more of a threat to you than somebody who's way across the planet. So we have to say, my brother is not the person who I was born in the home with, right? The person who was born by my mother, followed by my father. We have to start getting in the mindset that our brother is the person who chooses to follow the law. Period. Because those things harm us. That if you decide to choose to divide by anything else, everything gets all mixed up. People don't know who to let in. People don't know who to keep away. It's just all confusing, right? And then when you are lonely and people say, oh, well, such and such is your brother, you don't know what to say, right? Because you say, if you decide to chop everything up by who's close to you or who you feel is your kin by skin color or race, right? Then anybody can convince you of anything. So somebody can convince you to put someone who intends to kill you next to you. If they say, well, I'm your brother. Look, we got the same skin color. Or we're from the same neighborhood. Look, man, you should let me in. He might intend to kill you. And you are going to let him kill you based on your closeness to him, based on birth, kinship, or skin color, or neighborhood. Which doesn't make any sense. At all. So, and there's a few other laws that kind of follow the same theme. I'll say right now, this one's 202. It's Leviticus 15, verse 31. It says the people of Israel, aka if you on this journey, your family, right? The people, your brothers, should be separate from uncleanness, so they do not die in their uncleanness when they defile the tabernacle, right? So when you talk about touching unclean things, or people who are unclean, or people who are being abominations, right? Because there are things that people do that God says, who marks them an abomination, right? One of them is men who have sex with other men, right? Another one is, people who decide to, dress as the other sex, right? Women who decide to dress as men, and men who decide to dress as women. He calls it an abomination. And it tells you in here, do not let an abomination in your house, or you will become defiled like it. Right? So you need to stay away from uncleanness. Just because that's your brother, or just because that's your childhood friend, and they decide to do abominable things and become an abomination, right, does not mean you have to stick by that person and help that person. It's your job and your duty to separate yourself from uncleanness so you do not become a defiled thing from it. It's your job to not let it in your house so you do not become a defiled thing like it. Not based on race, religion, whatever else. Based on what is clean, what is unclean, what is an abomination, and what is not an abomination. And that is why it is very important for us to study these laws, because you don't know what good and evil is unless you study the law, right? You might say, oh, I can give leeway to this person, but no, you can't give leeway. If that person is doing abominable things and making themselves an abomination, they cannot do anything aside from defile you. So you might have it in your mind where you are going to help that person and you're safe and you're going to help them be good, but in all actuality, it tells you in the law the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to become defiled like it. So please say, if you care about yourself, you should probably save yourself and not become an abomination, especially if you have children, you have a family to take care of and things like that, right? You should probably make sure you take care of your family and not have these things around your family. They'll follow you and your family. Man, there's a few other laws that go along with this. Another one right now is law 5. Right at this point in time is law 532. It's Deuteronomy 23, verse 9. It says, when you go out against your enemies, keep away from every wicked thing. Right? So this has to do with you being able to defend yourself, or you being able to provide for yourself, right? When you go out into the world and someone has come against you, and you want to fight against that force that's coming against you with all abominations, all in your camp, supporting you, you're supposed to be keeping away from every wicked thing. So how are you ever going to be able to, one, defend yourself and stay alive, and two, ever go get something else, right? Go out and get something else, or defend your land or expand your land, if you have defiled yourself based on, hey, this is my brother. Just I know he's gay, but it's fine. Or hey, this is my brother. He's a cross-dresser, but it's fine, right? If you keep this person with you, right, and then you have to defend yourself, you're weakening yourself at that point, because you become an abominable thing. And it tells you in here, it says God abhors you, which basically like detests you, hates you, and you expect him to save you in battle. It's not going to happen, man. You could be faithful, you could pray, it ain't going to happen. It's in black and white right there. If you decide to mix yourself with an abomination and you have to go out to a battle, it tells you stay away from every wicked thing. So if you go out there mixed up, don't expect to be saved. It's in black and white. God is a just God. The same thing's going to happen every time. 10 times out of 10 it's going to happen. So it's important to know what's good, what's bad, what's an abomination, what's not an abomination. Because when we're talking about abominable things, these are things that God abhors and detests. And if you keep it around you, he will abhor and detest you too. So it's important to separate yourself from these things. It's important to choose who your brother is based on who is doing good, not who you know, not who looks like you, not who shares the same religion as you. It's important to separate on who's doing good and who's doing bad, and not who's doing good based on who has a new car, who is handsome or pretty. You need to separate based on who is saying the right things and doing the right things in God's eyes, because that's all that matters. That's what's going to save you. And like I said, there are certain things you can say you're oblivious, but there are certain things people will do beside the obvious that'll let you know where they stand, right? And I can tell you, just talking about the law will let you know. I'm telling you. Just talking about the law will let you know. If you say you decide to follow the law and that's what you do, many people will be offended. Most people, in my experience, are offended by me saying that. They start to look at you like you're an idiot. Now, if you tell that person that, I decided I'm going to be Jewish, right? I'm going to follow, because when I say Jewish, I don't mean Jew as in Judaism. I've said this before. I mean Jewish as in the word Jewish literally means someone who follows the lifestyle of an Israelite or the laws of the Israelites, right? Someone who follows the Mosaic law, the law of the universe that God gave to them to follow so they could become a nation, right? A lot of people will look at you like you have 3 heads, and they'll tell you, what we gonna do that for? They'll look at you like you've become out of date and you won't update yourself, right? And at that point in time, that seems like a small thing, but that person is letting you know where they stand. They're letting you know, I don't have a place in the future, and I intend to preach death. Now, preaching death isn't going out there and saying, I worship the devil, right? This person's not going to go out there and say, I worship the devil. This person's not going to go out there and say, I hate God. A lot of these people are going to be people who claim they've read the Bible and who claim they have a great relationship with God. But based on that, it's a lie. And based on that, this person seeks to destroy, because they don't have a place in the future. They are self-destructing. They do not have a place in the future. And if anything they attach to will be affected by their self-destruction, may be blown up altogether by their self-destruction. It may not have a place in the future too, including you. So at that point in time, you have decisions to make, right? You can elongate the process and say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to work with you. Right. And you say, well, look, if you go back through here, you can tell them this is going to help you. You can tell them, look, this is basically an instruction manual to save your life. You can tell them this is an instruction manual for you to be free and to have, control over the planet and the universe that you live in, and for you to live a good and prosperous life. You can tell them all that. You can show them a lot of the things that they think are in these laws that are so extreme are not even in here. You can show them that. And when you show them that, hopefully they do turn and say, you know what, I was wrong. But when you're bearing your cross, I can only talk about what I've seen firsthand. That does not happen. It just doesn't. These people may have, and when I say these people, I'm not talking about some foreign entity. I'm talking about the people who are probably around you right now. I'm talking about somebody who probably might be in your room that you're listening to this in with you right now, who you hold near and dear. Look around, take a good look. That person may have had this proposition to them earlier on in life and probably denied it. and you may have been living in ignorance your whole life, and now that you got this and you say, dang, I didn't know. I knew there was right and wrong and things like that, and I knew what people were telling me. Some of it was right, but some of it was just their opinion, and now I finally have the concrete list of what is right and what is wrong, so I can go ahead and navigate through life based on that, and you're happy you have it. A lot of these people out here, they have heard this before, and they have had this put in front of them before, and they decided to deny it. But they may not tell you that, but they know that for a fact, and they know they subscribe to say something else. They'll say things like, when you talk about, the law, and you talk about, hey, Jesus was preaching the law, right? A lot of these Christians say, well, Jesus is God, right? And you say, well, no, Jesus is, he came down and he became one with the law, right? He is the living embodiment of the law. So yes, he became one with God and his commandments, but no one man is God, right? That's kind of blasphemous to say. Right, you can't pray to a person. If you say that person is one with God, right, then why can't you just pray to God? Then why do you have to put a name on it, another name on it? Right, and you say these things and make it logical to them. And I'm telling you, in my experience, at the end of these conversations, even if you make it make perfect sense to them and you show them where things may have been wrong and where things may have been misunderstood, a lot of them will just default and say, your God is not my God. At that point, they are letting you know where they stand. They'll say, I'm telling, and I'm not just saying this just to say, like, as an example. People have said this to me many a time. I'm talking different people have said this to me on different occasions many a time. These are people who are claiming to be God-fearing, who've read the Bible. A lot of them have given up. A lot of them have seen this and said, I don't want to do that. I would rather be a part of this world. I would rather die on this planet. A lot of them say that. A lot of them have made a decision long before you came to your crossroad, right? And a lot of them chose death, and they intend to stick with that decision. And they'll say things like, what, your God is not the same as my God. Listen to what they saying and really think about that. Because you are talking about the God of the Bible. You're talking about the God of the Torah. You're talking about the God who came down and gave the law to Moses. You're talking about the God who took these people out of Egypt and gave them a kingdom. These people who were in slavery and set to be destroyed. The God who performed those miracles. The God who created this universe. That's the God you're talking about. And they say, your God is not my God. They're confirming to you. Take that as a confirmation. They are confirming to you that they have chosen death and they intend to stick with that decision. So you need to listen to them, and you need to make your decisions accordingly to protect yourself. Because I just read to you a bunch of laws that tell you everybody is supposed to follow the same thing. Everybody's supposed to stay away from evil. It tells you that. So you need to make decisions accordingly. You need to listen to people. I'm telling you, I've heard this while you're bearing your cross, you're going to hear things like this. I've heard it many a time, and I've seen it in the Bible many a time. And I'm telling you, it's like a scary movie. You'll hear it over and over again. People saying these things, and they're letting you know at that point in time, they are not your brother on that journey. So don't expect them to help. Just don't. And with that being said, I don't know if I need to address all of the categories people choose to separate themselves by, but I've already gone through a few, and kind of like the major ones, right? Religion, kin, who's their family, right? Who is their skin color, who is their nationality, right? Who has the same heritage, right? And I would say, I'm going to strongly caution against that while you are just period. You can't judge people based on those things. You have to judge people based on the law. Because no matter how good this person is at hiding themselves, right? This person may be a murderer or like a sexual deviant, and they choose to hide themselves in public and act like they're a God-fearing person. They might even be a preacher or a pastor, right? They can't hide themselves to someone who knows the law. You can see them, and you will see through them, and they will reveal themselves. It'll be in their speech. It'll be in their tone of voice. You'll be able to hear I know this man does not follow God and he's not in tune with the universe. He's trying to pervert and devour people. You will feel it in your spirit. It like when you get around people, and when, I'm just talking about my point of view. These days, now that I've become more attuned with the universe, when I get around people who have denied God and who have denied this universe and who are set to death, I literally feel sick to my stomach. If they brush against me and they touch me, I feel sick to my stomach. It'll make my heart start beating harder. I'm telling you, and these are people who, people who I may have worked with, people who seem like nice people, and I'll be like, man, what's wrong? Earlier on, I used to think, man, what's wrong with me that I feel this way that this person is around? Like, is this person giving me anxiety? Am I scared of this person or something? But I was like, there was no thought in my head of fear of this person or anything like that, but it was something about them that just repulsed me. And later on, I will find out that they were living repulsing lifestyles. That they have denied God and they live an evil lifestyle. Whether they choose to, some people look clean cut. They choose to live evil lifestyles, taking advantage of women, right? They have a hateful lifestyle. They're drugging people and whatever else and doing different things. And they basically have made themselves up like hated by God, right? And when you're in tune, you don't even need to stick around and see. When you get around that person, you'll be repulsed by them. Right, and I advise you to listen to that. And when you get around your brothers and you feel comfortable and things like that, even there'll be people who you do feel comfortable around who it's just a test. You'll see things you need to get away from, right? But even then, when you get further on your journey and you learn more and you become more fine-tuned, those people who you were once comfortable around will begin to repulse you. When you become more fine-tuned and you correct yourself. So be very careful on this journey and take the signs that you see and take the signs that you feel. The signs that you feel is probably something you don't even need to waste your time with because you already passed it and you've already, gotten past that point in your life, right? Then the signs that you see are signs that, you can take and internalize and that are wrong and, you may not have gotten past any point. So it may trip you up for a little bit, but you need to get over it. But when you see the signs, man, I would say in my experience, it's better that you just, if the sign says go right and it looks bad, it's better to just stay the course. In my opinion, because you end up wasting time. And I'm not saying that, this life is endless as long as you are in tune with God and you don't deny him, right? This life is endless. You'll have many and many generations. But, I would say, why waste your time? Choose your brothers wisely, and the brothers that you do have, keep them and keep up with them, and make sure that y'all respect your brotherhood before these other brotherhoods that are named, right? And that's very important when we build a better community for ourselves. When you're intending to build a better community for yourself and for the family that you have and things like that, these are the things where you need. This is what you need to be choosing your brother by, not old things. A lot of those people you're gonna have to leave behind. Period. You might be leaving everybody behind in some cases. So, take that what you may. And I know it might sound harsh and it might sound hard, but in my experience, the other side is way better. So just stay the course. It might seem hard, might seem impossible, might seem extreme, but the other side, in my experience, is way better, infinitely better, and will continue to get better. Right? The only thing that is going to get you is when you look back. Kind of like that story inside of where the woman turned to salt. She looked back. Same thing with you. Same thing with me. I've looked back plenty of times on my journey. And it did. I'm telling you, every time I look back, it didn't do anything but 1, hold me up, 2, set me back, and 3, make it harder to detach from it the next time I had to detach from it. So in my opinion, don't look back, and that goes through all walks of life. And when guys are choosing a mate and girls are choosing a mate, and that guy or girl is not living right, that is not your brother, that's not your sister. You need to separate yourself And the more you look back, you keep looking back, you keep going back. You right. You might be able to separate easily the first time, and then you end up calling them because you get lonely or whatever else. Find a good brother, find a good sister, and stick over there. You know, because when you go back, it might not be hard. It might be hard to sever the tie. The next time you might get pregnant, or she might get pregnant, and then it's hard to sever that tie at that point in time, right? Mistakes are mistakes, but you correct them before they become a permanent fixture in your life. Your brother is your brother, but hey, you know, if it's wrong, correct it before he becomes a permanent fixture in your life and destroys your ability to continue on this path of endless life. And that's all I have to say on this podcast. I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. It's new podcast every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's New York, New York City time zone. All right. Bye-bye.